This business is tough. Trust me, as a former dealer, I've been there. We were stuck doing wholesale with limited information. Why? Because nobody questioned it. But not anymore. In 2015, ACV Auctions was founded to provide a better auction experience, giving you unbiased condition reports, high-resolution views of the undercarriage, engine audio recordings, and so much more. And all of this in a 20-minute live auction. Get access to nationwide inventory, turn your inventory faster, and achieve a higher success rate. Sign up today. We're ACV Auctions, and you're in the driver's seat.
Hello, and welcome to today's session, Sourcing Inventory in the COVID Era, an Auction Perspective. Before we start, let's review a few items to help you participate during this event. Here's a sample attendee interface or control panel. You should see something that looks like this on your own computer in the upper right-hand corner. When you join today's session, you selected to join either by phone call or computer audio. If you would like to change your selection, you may use the control panel to access your audio pane. You may submit questions by typing into the questions pane of the control panel. Questions may be sent at any time. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. When submitting your text questions, please indicate if you would like the question directed to a specific panelist or to all. A recording of the presentation will be available on demand through the convention portal within 48 hours. Now, I would like to introduce Shaun Petersen, Interim Executive Vice President at NIADA.
Good afternoon. Welcome to today's panel. We are privileged to have some of the brightest and best auction minds in the industry with us today to share their experience, some of their expertise. Before we begin, I would like to take just a few minutes and have each of them introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about what they do, who they're with, and that'll help frame our discussion for this afternoon's panel. So let me first start with Grace.
All right. Thanks, John. First of all, unprecedented times, and thank you for putting this panel together, even if it's a COVID-19 video style. I'm Grace Huang, and I'm president of Manheim, as that includes all of our field operations as well as ready logistics, and of course, all of our recon operations. So excited to be here, and thank you again for putting this panel together.
All right, so hello everyone, and thanks as well, Shaun, for putting this on and inviting me to participate. And so I'm John Hammer, president of ADESA, also chief commercial officer of CAR. Been with ADESA for a few years, automotive background, different parts of the business, and just excited to be a part of the industry. Thanks.
Sure. Hi, I'm Joe Neiman, and Shaun, thanks for having me on the panel here. Really honored to be virtually next to all of you as some really powerful people running some big operations. So thanks for including me. I am the founder of ACV Auctions. We started the company back in 2015, and I assume many of you have heard of it now, but we're an online auction. And I guess, you know, the 2 second that got us here was I was an independent car dealer myself, really understand what all of our dealers are up against every day, and that's what drove us to start this company. So privileged to be here and have the opportunity to share with you all.
Well, thank you all for being with us today. You know, these are, to Grace's point, unprecedented times. And one of the things that we've constantly heard from our dealer members as they navigate their way through the pandemic is we have need of three things. First is customers, second is cash, and third is cars. And it's that that last bucket that really brings us to put this panel together today to get your all's perspective on the wholesale marketplace, not only during these trying times, but what does that look like moving forward? So we've got great questions that our panelists have worked with me to put together. We'll go through those, but I want to encourage all those that are participating and doing this session. If you have questions that you'd like to ask of any of our panelists, please feel free to submit those. They will be answered as quickly as we can from the panelists after the session is over, and we'll make sure we get that information to you as quickly as possible. So let me start with just a very basic question. You know, things have been very different for a lot of companies during the COVID pandemic. What changes have each of your individual companies had to make during the pandemic to manage things, not only from health and safety perspective, but just in managing the day-to-day operations during the crisis? So let me start with Grace, and we'll go around the horn from there.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest thing, obviously, for all of us on the panel today is we had to move digital, and we had to do it very, very, very quickly, over a weekend, actually, back in March. And so prior to COVID-19, we were selling about 50% of our vehicles digital, whether through a simulcast digital lane or through one of our OVE or Manheim Express properties. And so luckily we had invested in all the tools, we had all the functionality, we knew it was going to scale because at that point we already had 50% of the volume going through. So we were able to make that decision quickly. We were able to continue business, which was frankly the biggest impetus for us, to make sure that we were able to keep going even during the early days of COVID-19. At one point, we realized that if we really started shutting down all operations, as many of the states wanted us to, that we could potentially lock up the entire used car industry from a liquidity standpoint. And obviously during that time, nobody knew exactly how quickly, thank God, how quickly the industry would rebound. So first of all, big thanks to all of our dealers. I mean, they had to switch overnight how they operated and how they did business as well. So a lot of kudos to all of our clients.
I think everybody on this call will agree that independent dealers are nothing if but resilient. So, Joe, how would you answer that question? What changes did ACV make?
Sure. I think starting with our field teams, which we have a lot of people in the field inspecting cars and interacting with dealers. We are, as far as a digital platform, we're a high touch. So safety and precaution was our number one concern for our own teammates. They're the lifeblood of our organization. So getting them the supplies that they needed to be safe, with hand sanitizer and masks. And it's funny looking back, it feels like it was a long time ago, but all these things there were shortages. We were scrambling to be able to obtain the things that we needed to and then distribute them out to the field. But we really rallied and were able to do that and make some changes to our internal office, allowing people to work from home. And I would say almost all of that scaled beautifully behind the scenes without really having our dealers bear the burden of those changes. And then what was really paramount to us was our core experience as far as what the dealer sees didn't change. So we've always been a digital first platform. We don't have physical locations. Our cars go live. And so the beauty there was, aside from navigating some state level changes that were sometimes day to day, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York, it was wild. And whether our teammates could go out or whether trucks could pick up cars to make deliveries of the cars that we've sold. Other than that, I do feel we did a really good job maintaining the user experience that our dealers have kind of grown to love.
Joe mentioned state issues. I think we all got tired of hearing the term essential business. The buzz phrase of COVID-19 for many of us. John, how about you? What changes did ADESA have to make?
Yeah, I'd say very similar. I mean, we say day to day. Frankly, it was at times it felt minute to minute as we were going through making changes. And I think we were glad when it was hour to hour, and whole lot, happier when it got to day to day or week to week changes. And gosh, it impacted not just the locations where our auctions were, but also where our people lived. And so much thought had to go into whether we could operate or not. And like Grace mentioned, a lot of folks may not realize how digital our businesses already were. Ours was about 60%, so pretty similar to Manheim's situation. So we were prepared for it. We just had to go fast, and it truly was an overnight change to adding different products or different touch points. But as Joe mentioned, we're all out in the field. We're all touching and cars and there with dealers. We just had to be very careful with all the supplies and things. And like a lot of our customers, we probably just couldn't get it. And in some cases, we couldn't get the supplies we needed. And so it's nice to see now things have settled back down from that, and everybody's adapted pretty well.
So one of the, I think challenges of life is change and the impact of change on routines and personal experiences. How did these changes impact your dealer customer base? Joe, do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, happy to. You know, the changes in our marketplace, aside from price roller coasters, which that was kind of across the industry, I think it's important again to say that at least on ACV, that user experience didn't really change. So we didn't have to educate our customers on how to not go to the auctions or go to the auctions, but the cards aren't going to roll across the auction block. You know, our core experience didn't really get altered. That said, there were other things that we did have to work through. We work hard to listen to our dealers. We're kind of always on an initiative to collect good feedback and feedback that we can work from and improve upon. One area of our business that was definitely challenging was titles. And titles got pretty weird because when DMVs closed down for unknown amounts of time, there's states that are title holding states. Some of the banks were closed. Dealers can't get duplicate titles. So even when they sold a car and they think that the title's coming, so that definitely, you know, caused some internal friction, to say the least. I think that's a industry-wide issue that now it's starting to smooth itself out. But I would say if there were an adjustment, you know, that had to be made and get used to, and I think some of the policies in the greater industry changed as far as like title attached rules, and we all had to just to navigate those times.
So if you don't mind me, Joe, asking a follow-up question about titles, how are you communicating that information back to the dealers? If they have challenges in getting titles, or you guys have challenges in getting titles, how are you communicating to them and in resolving the situation or setting their mind at ease that title will be coming?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say it's also just being honest. It's an area that we have room for improvement on. We're a little bit the middleman, as we all function as in auctions, and we can pass the information along. And if the seller tells us it's coming, we'd like to believe them and put the buyer's mind at ease. What I will say is we have a lot of touch points. Again, as much as we're a digital first platform, we've got a lot of manpower, woman power, people power. You know, if we have to go into dealerships, and again, we do that anyways. We live in these dealerships. Obviously, that's changed a little bit with the COVID precautions, but generally speaking, we're on site, and I think we've made an internal effort that's starting to really pay off of just increased communication throughout our organization. Different departments, you know, the titles team leveraging the outside sales team to be able to have those interactions and collect information and put pressure on where it needs to happen. So I would say that's my answer. It's not a perfect answer, but these are far from perfect times too.
That much is true. John, let me bring you in. What kind of changes have the dealers had to make as a result of the changes that you all have made in your company?
Yeah, so similar to Joe, I mean, it depends on what part of the business you talk about within the car organization. So we have a trade rep business similar to ACV that, you know, the business was largely unchanged, and the things he talked about were certainly challenges for us to, you know, get into open lane and upstream purchasing and a lot of similarities. It was already a digital business. So the biggest changes did come within the physical lanes, and we certainly have a lot of dealers that they really enjoy that experience. And, you know, overnight you go to digital. So a big part of what we tried to do there was just to educate and train them and get them signed up. And we signed up over 10,000 dealers to be able to now participate that way. And, you know, I think they're adapting pretty well to it.
Grace, how about you?
Yeah, very similar to John. You know, look, with Manheim Express, it was the same thing. We continued on and actually saw tremendous growth during this period. And OVE also, our listed bid platform, also saw tremendous growth during this period. You know, again, it was the biggest impact for the dealers who enjoyed coming into our locations and doing all their work at our locations. And, you know, like we had same as ADESA, we had to do a lot of education. We had luckily rolled out a lot of buyer and seller tools So we had them available. Some folks had familiarity, some didn't. So we made sure that we had all the materials needed or personal training if needed. And we've seen buyer count grow a lot during this time period, which frankly even surprised us that we were able to capture more buyers. Now, of course, the sharp V helped a lot, but it was great to see once again, how resilient our dealers are and how they are able to pivot when needed. That said, I know many of our dealers still miss coming into the lanes, and we know that it's a big part of their life. And, like all of us, they've been cooped up probably in a bedroom or a basement somewhere. So we are looking forward to the day that we can have more dealers come back into the locations and do business. And, we're continuing to roll out locations where in-lane bidding is allowed. So we're excited about where we've been and where we're going, but we also know that choppy waters are still ahead, and so every day might still be a new day come the fall, with not knowing exactly what's going to happen with the elections and continuing of COVID-19. But again, just our dealers have been resilient, and it's great to see them adapt to all these new tools.
So John, let me throw this question for you to start with. So what kind of challenges are you hearing the dealers are having to deal with, and what are you guys doing to hear them and then adapt anything to meet those challenges?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge we hear across the board is just finding inventory. They struggling or short on inventory, sold through what they have, and looking everywhere to find a good car at a good price. So, that's a big piece for us. And I think data and analytics are coming into play more than ever in that side. We're able to see there's a lot of transparency into what dealers' behaviors are, and then we can take that into a marketing effort on our end to look at things like what is their typical pattern for buying, where were they the second highest bid on a car but they didn't get it. And then we can go back to them and say, here's an avenue. But between our open lane platform, TradeRev, and then the auction lanes, we can help steer them in directions, hopefully to help them find some cars. And some of them are just still learning to buy online too. We see a range of feedback from dealers. Some never bought online, thought they never would, and they got on and they loved it. And now we get stories like, I'm buying from the beach, I never thought I could do that, to some that are still pretty reluctant. So, for us, it's just education so that they know where to go, and, that their cars may be out of their normal spots that they used to go by.
Grace, how about from Manheim's perspective?
Yeah, for many of our dealers, I think it's been a nice surprise. I was actually just talking to a professional buyer this week, and he was saying, hey, I used to make this route, in person, and he still goes and he, checks out cars. But now that I'm buying, I can buy from multiple locations at once versus standing in the lane. So I think from that regard, that's been great. Obviously, I think the biggest challenges have still been around the digital representation of a car through the CR. And I know as an industry, that's something we're all tackling in various ways. And we're adding more images. We are investing a lot of money to continue to improve CRs. We know that in order for dealers to really have that confidence, we have to get to a better condition report, and we need a step change. And the technology is starting to get there with automated damage detections and artificial intelligence. I think that's going to bring that step change that we all need in this industry to really make digital platforms a long-term viable platform for any type of vehicle.
We do hear a lot about CRs. I'm glad that that's an initiative.
I figured somebody might as well put it on the table.
Joe, how about you?
Yeah, we like to position ourselves as a partner to the dealers. So their challenges are our challenges to work through. I agree wholeheartedly on the CRs. I do think we're kind of on that bleeding edge of the industry. I think we've set the standard. That's what our dealer customers tell us, which is great, our partners. Where we've really tried to lean in through all this to address the customer's needs, the dealer's needs, is we saw a huge ramp up in adoption of ACV and growth of ACV and in number of dealers and units sold, which has been which has been wonderful. Where we've now tried to over-index to help in that is increased staff. So we've actually been hiring a lot of people, and then it's training and development. We've got our own culture, we've got our special way that tends to work pretty well, and those with growth companies and high growth companies, those are, it's funny, you think about the core mission of what we're doing, which is out there inspecting cars and selling cars and disrupting an industry for the better. But we have to have all of our teammates in alignment and rowing, so to speak, in the same boat, in sync, and working together. So we've really over-indexed behind the scenes, and so I wouldn't say it's necessarily one thing that our customers have needed, but what we're trying to do is just create a more seamless operation, a more seamless engagement for them with our entire operation, which is it's a monumental task, but we're at it every day.
Right. Let me just take a minute and remind the listeners that if you have questions for any of the panelists, please feel free to use that chat function, get those submitted in. We'll get those distributed to the panelists and they'll get back to you as quickly after the session as possible. So one of the things I think, and this is maybe my old football and wrestling coach kind of in my head, but the old adage of where challenges exist, so do opportunities. And let me pose two related questions to you all. One is, what challenges exist that might lead to opportunities, or what opportunities do you see for both you as the auctions as things become more digitized, or as you battle through the pandemic issues? And then the second part B to that question is, what about from the dealer's perspective? What opportunities exist as a result of all these challenges that everybody's facing right now? So Grace, let me start with you on that one.
Yeah, so from a challenge to opportunity, look, for us, we run a big operations which include reconditioning. So one of the opportunities which we have found out is that we can start really repurposing space to focus more and more on recon for our dealers, and not just commercial clients, but also for dealers who want to buy a car on auction and have it frontline ready. It's something we've been working on for years, but over the COVID period, we've really accelerated that business as well, as more and more dealers wanted and more clients wanted us to help them with their frontline recon and have it up and posted and listed for their retail clients before it leaves the auction. And obviously, as Cox Automotive and with Auto Trader and dealer.com and so forth, we can create that, again, as Joe said, seamless experience, not just within our auction space, but for entire business for the dealer. In terms of opportunities for the dealers, obviously, again, by buying digitally, again, it opens up this world, and we've seen bidding in our digital lanes increase. Which is great for our sellers, maybe not so great for our buyers, but also the fact that they can buy more, right? They're no longer have to just go to New Jersey on Tuesday or PA on Friday, but they can buy from many different places, and so they're much more efficient, is what we've heard. Like John, I've heard of dealers who are telling me, oh, wow, I can, be in my pajamas, and we really like being in our pajamas and being able to knock out a couple auctions all at once. And it's amazing. We've seen dealers, they have lots of different locations open up on their screen at once, which obviously you can't do in a physical world. So I think in terms of the opportunities, especially during this time of really tight inventory, by being digital, the ability to buy from more places has opened up.
Thanks, Grace. Shaun, how about you?
Yeah, Joe had mentioned, coming from an independent dealership background, and I have that as well. And I think just trying to put ourselves in their shoes and realize that, the transition to digital is not easy for all of them, and a lot's been thrown at them. So while it does also create a lot of opportunities, we just try to understand where they're coming from. And I've actually been in an environment where digital the group really liked to buy digitally, and then I've also been in an independent group where we're very physical. So I've seen both sides of it, and just recognizing that as we move really quickly to a digital world here, just making it as easy as possible. And the seamless integration word keeps coming up, and I think that's a big piece for all of us, just trying to figure out how to make it easy for them. They're going awfully fast, and it's pretty complicated, particularly if they're not used to buying or selling online. And now we're heading to formats where they could sell any day online, at any time online, really from any place online. So it just gets a whole lot, in some ways, a lot more complicated. In a lot of ways, though, it's intended to make their life easier as they start to adapt to those types of things.
Joe?
Sure. I think from an opportunity standpoint, I'll start with for ACV, it's collecting the feedback, right? Being able to listen to our dealers. We have a lot of people on the phones. We obviously a lot of emails, a lot of texts. We make ourselves very available to our customers, but then aggregating all that feedback and distilling it down and understanding, what things we need to act upon. I just find as tumultuous as the times are right now, it's even more important to have our ear to the customers and really listening and really hearing what they have to say about our platform, about the industry, what's working other places, what we should be focused on. So kind of an unexpected opportunity, quite honestly, is turning to social media. So I've kind of thrown myself into some of these Facebook groups, which has actually been a lot of fun. We learn a lot. It's not all great feedback, but it's actionable, and you start to understand what factors really do need to be improved. Some of the stuff is obviously when a dealer makes a mistake and they want to vocalize it, but the mob mentality sorts those sort of things out and makes it clear. But I would just say the opportunity for us is to continue to be really, like John said, one with the dealers, listen to them, and with as much agility as possible, respond to their needs. Flipping that back to the dealers, again, our experience for the dealer hasn't changed. So, but I would consider a lot of the dealers that have embraced ACV over the past 5 or so years to be more so on the cutting edge. Not that technology is hard, but it's the leap of faith, right? It's jumping into that world and committing to buy digitally. But those that have done it have actually had a smoother ride through all this COVID because their world didn't get completely turned upside down. So I think the opportunity is, to just continue to be open-minded and try new things. And it definitely can be scary, and protect yourself and read the rules and understand the different marketplace dynamics. Read your arbitration policies; they're there for a reason. Arm yourself. Go into it thoughtfully. But you need to be looking everywhere, and you need to be buying everywhere. That's truly, I believe, that's how I was able to be successful when I was an independent dealer, is setting my sights out as far as possible and casting as big a net as possible. And the beautiful thing is digital enables that, beyond anything that dealers could have done, say, 10 years ago.
John, let me start with you on this question. Are there things, as you guys have gone through the pandemic and getting feedback from dealers, that you recognize or realize, hey, we need to invest more, we need to make a tweak over here to make the process better for those dealers?
Yeah, we've been listening a lot, trying to understand, as we make this change, what is important, what makes this easier. And I think it's great to mention inspections. Certainly an area that was loud and clear. Shaun, you commented as well. You guys hear it at inspections, and consistency is a word that comes up, but I think also relevant inspections is the other word. Like, tell me what I really need to know on a car that I'm purchasing, and that's very different on a $3,000 car than it is on a $10,000 or $20,000 car. So we also are investing in technology to help with that, but I think a lot of it to kind of taking the technology out of it and saying, how do we orient these inspections that they're really valuable to the customers? And if we're going to ask them to buy a little further away from home, then we need to make it more comfortable for them, to do so. The other piece is transportation, and a lot of pain in the transportation area. Some limitations there. We do have a business within Cars Arrive that we're able to leverage for that. But I think in the shortage of transportation opportunities, and it's slowed down that piece. So we're doing our best there to try to help out and find alternatives to get cars to dealers quicker.
Joe, same question for you.
Certainly. Yeah, I think for us it's continued growth, and it's riding this wave. Continued improvements to our marketplace. There's been a lot of things that dealers have been asking for. We are chipping away at that. It's maintaining the integrity of the platform, and the mission, and ensuring that our infrastructure can handle, which it's fortunately been rock solid, but handle the growth, handle the increased listings, handle the increased user traffic. And then continued acquisitions, which has been a lot of fun. So kind of venturing into different segments of the industry to broaden our reach. So we are going in a big way into the inspections space, the lease inspections. We also acquired a company called True 360, which is another inspection company that helps to clarify history reports. So dealers, again, are our customers, and it adds value to the cars that they purchase that might have a blemish on a history report. So it's a way to almost truthfully embed an in-person, high-touch inspection of that car that then builds value in that car for when they go to retail it. At the end of the day, we've been saying trust and transparency for 5 years. It is our motto. It's what we truly believe in. And, for this whole thing to work, to sell all the cars that we do, whether it's our marketplace or one of the competitors, there has to be trust and there has to be transparency. Those are just the pillars of a marketplace.
Thanks, Joe. Grace?
Yeah, well, I mean, Joe brought up the CRs again. Obviously, that's one of the biggest, drivers, especially in this world. And for us too, I think for 75 years, our dealers have interacted with single locations, and we appended that. You no longer can go into the office and see the same faces. And so we're working really hard in listening to our dealers to really understand the pain points when that got removed. And unfortunately, it got removed very suddenly, right? When we moved to all digital, and all of a sudden no dealers can come into our building. So how do we really replicate that same experience, that same hand-holding in a digital world? And so we're working really hard behind the scenes to create that frictionless experience for our dealers, to make it as easy and as comfortable as it would be if you were standing in front of a person at an auction that you've known for 25 years. So we're working hard to make that experience still feel the same, but with all the benefit of now being able to do it digitally. Look, one of the things we also know, and we hear a lot from our dealers, is when are you reopening, in-lane bidding? And I'm going to put that out there as well. Look, we're looking at it every day. For us, safety is still number one, and our top priority to make sure that we can operate safely for all of our team members and all of our clients. And so we're continuing to evaluate, because we know it is hard. It's hard to work in it. Sometimes you just want to get out. And so we're continuing to look at that and continue to evaluate, but we know that's one of the things we hear the most from many of our dealers.
It's actually a great segue into this question, and we've certainly heard from a lot of our dealers. Prices are high, supply is low. John mentioned transportation issues, and this is, I guess, is a general question that piggybacks off of all of those sorts of things. Are we ever going to get back to the way that it was? Are we ever going to get back to the pre-COVID way of sourcing inventory? Joe, let me start with you. Do you see any kind of reversion back to the way it was on January 1, 2020 and not March 1st, 2020?
I mean, it's a little bit of a trick question, because in our world, that user experience didn't change at all. And I think that's, one of the important takeaways here is the dealers that have been using ACV, whether it was January 1st, March 1st, or September 1st, they've got the same experience. Aside from, again, the variations and the roller coaster in pricing, we have supply, we have inventory, it comes right to your phone or desktop. It's that same real-time experience. So that doesn't scare me. It doesn't really concern me, because our core business, we didn't build a business to be COVID proof, but it turns out that that's what we ended up building. So I don't know. I think that the dealers, I've seen this transition over time, right? I've been listening to dealers for years now, and capturing their feedback, and they're and I was too. I was a diehard in-lane buyer when I was a dealer. I never bought cars online because I needed to touch the car. It needed to be, my hands on the car. I couldn't trust anyone. The dealers that have, it's kind of like a trust fall exercise. The dealers that have been willing to take the leap and trust us, I think generally have been pretty pleased with the online experience, and it actually does pack some of the same excitement factor, the transparency factor. We're de-risking it. Our efforts into these condition reports of 50+ photos, and plugging in scan tools, and paint meters, and undercarriage scans, and audio recordings of the engine. These are all built to replicate what a best case scenario hands-on inspection would be. And I would consider myself to be a professional car buyer, but I made plenty of mistakes. And I think when we're honest with ourselves, we all have, if we've done that, if we've lived in that world and done that job. So my guess is it never goes back to what it was. If what it was cars at the physical auctions, and really, the heydays of what it was. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I understand change is scary, and nobody wants it, but the world moves forward, and I think dealers can move forward and feel safe and confident doing it. I mean, look, the stock market's all online, right? There's really not traders on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange anymore, and that's okay. I think in the end of the day, the digital platforms enable the dealer and empower the dealer to make better decisions and have more opportunities. So they just got to take the leap and get educated on it. And I think it's for their own best good.
Thanks, Joe. Grace, what about you? What for the dealers that are reminiscing of the good old ways?
Yeah.
Will we ever go back?
Yeah, look, I don't think we'll ever go back to exactly the way it was. I mean, we've all progressed as companies, as an industry, and even dealers themselves, with the changes they've had to make, they've progressed, right? And nobody is going to want to go backwards per se. Some of the things, though, I know there's, for us, it's really about how do we bring the best of the pre-COVID days and keep all the best of where we are today and operating. And so, I would say I'd like to bring them all together and move forward as the best of, and whatever that looks like. And our dealers will continue to tell us what that looks like for them, because we know that, as part of Manheim, we have lots of different channels and lots of different ways to interact with us. And that's something that we've always been very proud of. And we want to make sure we continue to have all those different ways dealers want to interact with us, but also continue to move the industry forward and continue to be where the dealers are as they move forward as well. So.
And John, how about your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, the business has really been disrupting itself for a long time. If we think about it from that perspective, I mean, it's been moving digital for many years. If you go back 15 years ago, probably, I mean, you're seeing an evolution of digital, and it comes in different waves. It's certainly sped up over time, but this COVID thing just pushed it along really fast. And does it go back? It really, as it's gone over the past 15 years, I mean, it really hasn't gone back that much. I think dealers start recognizing that there are ways they can do business differently. Some will go back to they want to buy in lanes. We offer that opportunity for them to come and buy in lanes, and we do have some that come. We're also finding some that come to look at the cars, and then they go right home and they bid on their computer for the same cars they just looked at. So I think in general, everybody's just evolving a bit how they do business. And does it go back to exactly the way it was at the beginning of the year, or 2 years ago, or 10 years ago? I don't think so. I mean, I think we just continue to move forward.
So what does that look like in the short term? If we're not going back to the way that it was, at least entirely, what does that look like between now and the end of the year, and then maybe peeking ahead into 2021? And I know a lot of this is election dependent and pandemic dependent, but what do you think it looks like in the short term, and what do you think it looks like as we peer into 2021? John, you were on a roll. Do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, so I'd say in the near term, things are pretty much the same. I mean, you said it. I mean, the virus is still out there with no vaccine or anything like that. Everything's just continuing as is. Um, the biggest difference for us right now is cars aren't going down the lanes. We still have dealers coming to preview cars. They're still in lanes buying the cars. And the biggest thing for us, the reason we're set up that way is because for us to be able to distance in the auctions, it takes up the lane space. The cars can't come through the lane. So we certainly are prioritizing, safety and people being able to separate and do business that way. At the same time, a lot of folks are voting with, buying from home anyway. So we invite a lot of dealers to come to the auctions, and, some come because they enjoy it. Others, still buy from home. But, the one thing that I think we all miss in the physical auction world is the physical interaction with customers. I mean, it really has been a social hub. And I think for a lot of our folks, as they were going through the deepest parts of COVID, they really missed the social interaction. And frankly, a lot of those folks are like family to them. I mean, they've been coming for years. Employees that have been there for years, the same dealers have been coming for years. So it's been tough for us, in that physical channel. So we're glad to see the dealers back. We're glad that they want to come preview cars. We're glad that they're visiting our locations, and we certainly miss all the interaction we had with them.
That is definitely one of the things we get a lot of feedback on, is the social interaction element, and especially from an association perspective. All the folks on this session have been so great to the associations as an opportunity for them to interact with the dealers there as well. So let me thank you first of all for that, but too for your support of the associations in so many different ways. Grace, what about from your perspective, short-term and long-term perspective?
Yeah, I think pretty much the same. I mean, look, safety is still number one for us as well. And so in the short run, it doesn't look like a whole lot is going to change unless, Russia really comes up with a vaccine and decides to bring it to the US, which I don't think is going to happen. So no, in the short run, obviously, we don't see that. We are continuing to, as the pandemic levels change, allow more buyers to bid in lane, begin to talk about potentially opening up some of our offices for clients of ours who've been officing out of our facilities. And we'll start talking about at what point does it make sense to open up the front office. But in the short run, it feels like it's going to be about the same. And look, it's really hard to know right now what it will look like into next year. I mean, a lot of it will depend on whether we have a vaccine or not, honestly. But in the meantime, we're continuing to push, the things we need to do to make sure that buying for dealers become easier and easier and easier, even if we have to stay in this digital state for longer.
Joe, how about the ACV perspective, short-term and peering into 2021?
Sure. I'll be a little contrarian. I mean, I think the future is bright. Quite honestly, I think that this has shown dealers that they can be successful buying in a digital platform, embracing something new, learning something new, right? And if they were already proficient buying on ACV or a similar platform, then their world got rocked a whole lot less than their fellow dealer who's held out on trying something new and then really. And I feel for those dealers. I get it. And again, I was one of them, so I would have been probably caught in that same tricky situation of really having to rush to learn a new technology and a new platform, and that's a little frightening to say the least. What I would say too is, and I'm not proud to say this, or I'm not happy to say this, I think this is kind of the new world normal, right? The new world order. We've all gone through something rather traumatic here. We're still going through it. My assumption is, though, and I hope it's not the case, but my assumption is this won't be the last time that we end up with, kind of national shutdowns and all this, weirdness that we're going through right now. Again, hope that's not the case, but what I would tell any business owner, any friend is, prepare yourself so that the next time this happens, you're not stuck, you're not caught in it. And if that means using a digital auction platform to source and liquidate your inventory, then that's probably a smart move to do anyways, because you're staying ahead of it. You're insulating your business and your livelihood from variables that are outside of your control. I think price fluctuations are going to be a real thing. That's not a bad thing. That just means dealers need to be highly focused on inventory turn time. Buy the car, recon the car. It's the oldest, important factors in retail that there are, but turn the metal, right? And go back and the more you can ride the wave, and if prices are high, that's okay. Sell into a high retail market. But if it starts to drop, you don't want to be holding the cars from 6 months ago, or you could be subject to a lot of exposure there, especially if you're on a floor plan. But even still, if it's your cash or the floor plan's cash, you don't want to be losing it. So I would just, my recommendation there to dealers is just stay agile, stay light on your feet, and keep things moving.
So that actually leads to, and maybe I'll go off script a little bit with this question. We're going to hear throughout the course of our conference different perspectives on what the supply is going to look like here in the near future and in the long-term future, in what prices may look like short-term, long-term, what dealers need to do to be flexible, to Joe's point. But let me kind of pose a question to this group. What do you think, is there going to be a dam burst in the near future, and we'll start to see an increase in supply? Do we think supply is going to be tight for the foreseeable future? Grace, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, no, I mean, we know, and we've heard from most of our, many of our clients, especially in the repo segment, that the cars are out there. Obviously, that was put to a stop during the beginning of COVID-19, and that's starting to turn back on. So we know the inventory is coming. We know they have to go through our channels. And so we know it's just a matter of when it gets there. So far, from what I can tell, and from IARA, sounds like the repo rate hasn't necessarily gone up. But again, that, being in where we are with the economy, you have to imagine that rate will start ticking up as well. So yes, I think the inventory is coming. I think there's going to be a lot of inventory now. Obviously, the key will be the balance between, there could be a lot of inventory, but how does retail demand hold up? And hopefully the retail demand will continue to hold up for our dealers, so that they can take advantage of the inventory that's coming.
Joe, I know you mentioned earlier that that you think that there are cars that are out there. Do you think that there's going to be an increase in supply, or do you think you see things staying pretty steady? Any perspectives on supply over the course of the near and long-term perspective?
Yeah, look, I think what's happened here is, if you look at what should have been the spring market that didn't happen, we pushed a lot of that into the summer market. So all that retail bottleneck demand, kind of springboarded back, and we saw just an unbelievable retail summer, which drove prices very high in the wholesale market. I believe it's normalizing, and I also believe as that pent up demand has become satisfied, what we'll see on the dealer consignment world is that there'll be a softening in retail, which is not necessarily a bad thing. A little bit of a softening in retail, which will drive dealers to be more open to liquidate their trades. Right now, when we talk to a lot of dealers, even though we're having record months and record growth, we still see a lot of of our typical sellers holding a lot of the trades, even holding cars that are way out of their core competencies. But they've seen such high retail demand, they don't want to let anything that has any life in it go to wholesale, because they think that there's retail life in it, and I respect them for that. As that perception starts to soften, I think you'll see a lot more of these cars move back into the wholesale marketplace, and then appropriately shuffle to the best end user for that car. Just to make a make-believe example, but if it's a Ford dealership taking an older 130,000 mile BMW 5 Series, are they really the right dealership to go and resell that car, or should they send it to an auction and then it goes to the right used car dealer who specializes in that sort of inventory and can maximize on the opportunity? And I think that's I think that's right around the corner, quite honestly.
Yeah, Joe mentioned dealers really they were hanging on to trades, maybe things they weren't used to. They also really just didn't even have aged inventory because they had sold through what they had. So supply was really tight on that front. I think a lot of us thought the repo thing might get turned on. And I think you said, the dam burst was the term used, Shaun. And I think at one point we thought that might be the case. And we're really just seeing a slow, steady increase in repo volume. And as states get turned on and they judiciously decide where they're going to start doing repos, it's just slowly turning on. So I don't know that we expect at any point to see repos really all at once happen. And kind of the same thing with off-lease cars. A lot of them are getting gobbled up upstream, even before they ever get into the channel from the customers, because those cars, they're in equity, so they're buying up the cars. So it's really created a pretty steady environment with inventory, which might be somewhat good in general in keeping values up. Though I will say we're feeling the same thing. It does feel like the demand is starting to soften a little bit, meaning sales are probably slowing just a little bit and maybe normalizing. So my guess is in the last part of the year, we'll see prices start stabilizing some, probably still say higher than normal, and we'll see a little bit more inventory out there.
Yeah, I should add, the week before was the first week where we had a day where MMR fell below 100% since I think the beginning of May. So, we are definitely over the next few weeks and coming months, we are going to be in for some type of price correction. Obviously, we hope that it's a gradual and not a sharp drop, but a gradual decline. But yeah, we are starting to see that happen.
What's the one tip that you would give to dealers as they start to look post-pandemic?
I would say just embrace the changes. The future is now. The dealer that's willing to accept the fact that times have changed, adapt to the current reality, that's going to be the dealer that succeeds here. So there's more than enough ways to accomplish that. It doesn't have to just be ACV. You can see that all these great companies have offerings to help them. But I would say just don't be left behind. Don't let stubborn ego hold your business back. There are great tools out there, ACV being one of them, but obviously there's a whole lot more to propel your business forward, and now is the time to lean in and take the reins. And the future is bright. It quite honestly is. It's just we all need to be agile and light on our feet, and run our businesses the best way possible.
Yeah, I think somewhat similar, and Joe was saying it too, is just open to think about different things and to try new things. And as a dealer, we used to get really in the trap of buying in a certain location, and we didn't want to buy a northern car, we didn't want to buy a southern car. Those types of things got really embedded into our DNA. And I think as things are changing and you have opportunities to try some different things, I think it's good. I think give it a shot. We're still there with the old way to do business as well too. If dealers like coming in the lanes and they want to buy cars that way, we're there to support that as well. But I guess just encourage you to try different things. There are definitely other ways, other cars, other things that you could put in your inventory to make money and to do things a little bit differently. And I guess just in closing too, if we can help you with that, we're certainly here to help you through that, to train if that's something you need, or to show you. We can discuss the analytics and things like that. But bottom line, just would suggest trying some different things.
Well, I want to thank Grace, Shaun, and Joe for their time and expertise today. I want all the dealers that are participating again to feel comfortable in posing questions to this group. You can still use that chat feature, get those questions in. Panelists will respond quickly. But I also want to encourage you to go and visit their virtual expo hall booth. Each one of these fine companies are represented there. They've got representatives that will be available to set appointments with them, to not only see the products that they have, but also to chat about some of the things that we've talked about today. And if you have questions about anything that was presented today, their staffs will be there to help you navigate that. Let me turn it over now to our conference moderator to close out our session.
Thank you to all of our presenters and to everyone in attendance today. That's all the time we have for questions. We will compile any unanswered questions, and the presenters will respond to them directly. Once you leave today's session, you will receive a survey on the presentation. We appreciate your time in providing us with valuable feedback. To attend another breakout session, please return to the convention agenda and select the link to log on to the next session. On-demand content will be available at your convenience on the on-demand section of the convention website. On behalf of NIADA and our presenters, thank you for joining us today and have a great rest of your day.